So, what does it mean to be a typical Brit? It's always tough to pin down the character of an entire country, right? But with a place as diverse as the UK, it gets really interesting. So, let's get right into it and try to deconstruct this whole idea.
Okay, so let me start by asking you, just take a second. When you picture a typical British person, what pops into your head? Is it the way they talk, something they do, maybe a character from a TV show? Just hold that thought because we're about to see how it holds up.
And this right here, this is really the heart of our whole discussion. On the one hand, you've got that old school perception, the gentleman in the top hat, the one. But then there's the reality of today, a super vibrant, melting pot of so many different cultures and identities. So, how do we connect these two worlds? Well, we're going to start by digging into those classic traits the Brits are famous for around the globe. We're talking about the big three, that sort of emotional reservation, this incredible politeness, and of course, that very particular sense of humor. First up is probably the most famous one of all, the stiff upper lip. It's an idea that's been in movies and books for ages, but what does it actually look like in real life? So basically, it boils down to this. The idea is that you stay composed, you don't make a big fuss or a scene when things get tough. And the words we use to talk about this are things like stoicism, or being reserved or composed, even when you're under a lot of pressure. And here's the official definition just to lock it in. Being stoic means you endure a tough time without really showing what you're feeling on the outside. It's this idea of quiet strength that's a huge part of the traditional British image. That whole keep calm and carry on spirit.
All right, let's shift gears to the next big trait. And this one can be, well, a little confusing for outsiders. I am talking about the legendary sorry culture. Honestly, if you've ever been to the UK, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, here is the secret. Sorry doesn't always mean I'm apologizing for something I did wrong. A lot of the time, it's just a social lubricant. Think of it as a tool to make everyday interactions go a little smoother, to make things less awkward, and to just avoid any kind of confrontation. And this totally captures it. You'll literally hear someone say sorry even if you're the one who bumped into them. It's just a core part of social etiquette, a default setting that keeps things courteous and, yeah, pretty apologetic. Okay, on to our third classic trait, that unique British sense of humor. People often say it's an acquired taste, and that's probably because it's just on a completely different wavelength than the humor in a lot of other places. And at the absolute heart of it all is this one idea, self-deprecation. It's the art of making fun of yourself, of your own mistakes and flaws. And what's interesting is, it's not seen as a weakness at all. In fact, it's seen as a really good quality to have. So this kind of humor, which is packed with irony and sarcasm, is often used to break the ice or even as a bit of a defense mechanism. It's all about being witty and dry, and the main rule is, whatever you do, don't take yourself too seriously. All right, so we've talked about the personality, but how does all of that show up in just, normal daily life? Well, that brings us to the famous British obsessions, what some people have called the holy trinity of everyday British life. And you can almost think of this as the survival guide. Step 1, you always start by talking about the weather. It's the perfect, safe topic. Step 2, tea. It's pretty much seen as the answer to any problem you could possibly have. And step 3, the sacred art of queuing. There is this deep, unspoken respect for waiting your turn in line. Jumping a queue? Oh, that's a major social crime. Okay, so we've had some fun with the classic traits and daily habits, but, and this is a really big but, it's so important to understand that those stereotypes are not the full picture, not even close. Let's move on to the reality of Britain today. This quote pretty much says it all, doesn't it? That old-fashioned image we see in movies is exactly that, a thing of the past. The truth about modern Britain is way more complex and, frankly, way more interesting. And here's the key takeaway. If you had to choose just one word to define what British identity is today, that word would be multiculturalism. It's not just one part of British life. It's really the defining feature of it. And you can see what this means in practice everywhere you look. I mean, think about the national dish. Sure, some people might say fish and chips, but a lot of others would argue it's actually chicken tikka masala, which has South Asian roots. British culture itself, the music, the fashion, it's all this amazing mix of influences from the Commonwealth and all over the world. So the best way to describe British identity today is diverse, cosmopolitan, and pluralistic. It's a true fusion.
So that leaves us with one final big question. You have these really old, deep-rooted traditions of, say, stoicism and politeness, and they exist right alongside this incredibly dynamic, multicultural reality. So how does that mix, that blend of old and new, of tradition and diversity, actually work in daily life? That tension and that fusion is probably the thing that truly defines what it means to be British today.